Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on March 8th, 2026 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I made it my life's calling to remind people that we can't. I'm stumbling over this really badly today. I made my life's calling to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I build myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use and in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they keep working for me and have worked for literally thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on their own personal efforts. Now, before we get into things, I do want to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator in the background, and he usually stays there to keep an eye on tech, make sure it runs properly, and to watch for problem children. Okay. Now, with that in mind, we have Kira Ava in the house here. She is one of our moderators in the chat room. She's also my editor-in-chief and my wife. Now, her primary moderator job really seems to be doing her best to keep an eye out and make sure if a question is asked that I missed, that she catches it for me. Or for you, depending on how you look at it. With this in mind, if you've got a question, absolutely put it in the chat room. Put it in the chat room in all caps so I can find the thing. Then we slide down a little further. We have LA Moon. She is our primary moderator in the chat room. And she's the one that keeps an eye out to keep the communication lines going, ask questions if they don't seem to be being asked. And most importantly, in my eyes, in a lot of ways, she keeps an eye on my physical health to make sure I don't go and drop dead on you while I'm on air. It's okay if I drop dead after I get off air, but then Kira will get upset. Now, do we got any of the other moderators in yet? No. So we go back to the top here, and in with the goal we have Kitty Catty. Hey, Kitty Catty. Kitty Catty, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Yeah, I know things are hectic on your end of the world, so I hope they're settling down at least a little. And then we have Operation Shutdown. You are in with the gold. No, with the silver. Kitty Catty got the gold. Operation, you have the silver. How's it going? Glad to see you again. We go down a bit further, and we have, who do we got? Nope, that's where it ends for the moment. But we'll keep an eye out on it. Now, today, we are looking at the responsibility of religious and spiritual leaders. There are so many people that are claiming to be, and I use the term quite readily, and apologies ahead of time. Simply put, I'm not known for being subtle. But in my way of looking at it, a religious or a spiritual leader, or for that matter, political leaders or company leaders, you have very simple responsibilities. Number one, I understand the whole idea behind profit and loss. That's easy. Okay. But your primary responsibility has got to be continuity. If you're going to say this is what you should be doing, back it up. If I tell you I'm planning, this is what I'm doing with my life, what I feel you should be doing with your life, absolutely back it up. You can bet your bottom dollar. If I tell you got to clear the clutter out of your house, I'm doing my best. Now, I can give you all kinds of excuses of what's caused the problem, but I do have 60 years of professional pancreatitis. Okay. But I'm also wiping out a lot of the clutter I've got. When I tell people, you've got to treat people, follow karmic law. Okay. Treat people the way you desire to be treated. You can bet your bottom dollar I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about the way that I look at things. There's a lot of you that have told me, Keith, you got to learn a little bit of tact. You got to be gentle with people's feelings. Have you noticed the world today? Okay, there's a problem here. When virtually every religion out there is telling you, get along and we're all God's children. Why? And this one you get to figure out. Okay, I'm just going to pop a number out there. I have not done the extensive research to sort it out. So this is one of those few times where I'm simply going to take the ratios I was told. Okay, but if virtually every spiritual path tells you all people are children of God and we should all get along, why, pray tell, are in excess of 80% of the wars around the world throughout time have been started based on religious differences? Okay, is it just because you don't call the person something? Okay, maybe you don't like the name peanut butter and you want to call it butter peanuts, and this is enough to start a war? Apparently. But our religious leaders, our spiritual leaders, they're telling us all sorts of things that are leading people down a very black path. Their responsibility is to take the greater number of people, not the people with the greatest number of dollars in their pocket, but the greatest number of people, and help them see a way to get along. Okay, in business, you've got these CEOs going, we want this done. We want to make money. We want this greed-based stuff. Yet they treat the very people that they are trying to get to do the job like absolute garbage. Okay, now I don't know about you, but this does seem kind of counterproductive. Okay, when somebody accepts stepping into a position, okay, and I know there's all kinds of external forces. Okay, I did work for a political group for a little while, 4 years to be more precise, and I had great ideas as to what I would like to see happen. But the number of people that get themselves into these positions and go, I'm going to promise to do this, that, and the other thing. Okay, and then never mind not making the apparent effort for it, they turn around and blame somebody else. Okay, I was talking to a business owner one day and mentioned that the cleanup in the restaurant wasn't being done properly. There's a problem with the training. The manager in question immediately told me they've been trained properly, they're just not doing the job, meaning it's not my fault. Well, bad news, guys. If you're a spiritual leader, if you are if you're a company leader, your responsibility is to literally make sure you get the message across one way or the other. Now, there's two types of things we have to look at. What I call true ignorance and what I call stupidity. True ignorance is simple. If for whatever reason you didn't get the message, okay, that you didn't piece two and two together, that's true ignorance. No matter how often you're told, sometimes things don't click. How many kids have you ever heard of that go, there's a red hot stove. So they go and put their hand on it, they burn their hand. The spiritual leader, in this case, the parent, has to be on the ball and make sure that they, number one, deal with, hopefully circumvent the problem first. Let's face it, I don't know about you, but if I could have avoided having a stroke, simply because I buttoned my lip, okay, had I actually figured that out beforehand and spoke my mind a lot more readily, it would have saved me a lot of hassles. But when when you're claiming to be a spiritual leader, okay, and you're going, you've got to behave in this fashion to make the world around you work properly. Mike Jones, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You are actually in with the bronze. You know, if you're standing up there saying, this is what you've got to be doing, okay, and then you yourself are looking down on people and treating them like lesser individuals than you are, you're not doing your job properly. And it's your own self-proclaimed job. You're the one that stepped into the spiritual path. You're the one that said, this is what I'm doing. Like when I tell you I bill myself as a spiritual guide, it's because when I see somebody doing something that is backwards, okay, I will point it out quite readily. But at the same time, if I find myself, if somebody finally gets it through to me that I've done something backwards, that they can actually give me something that makes sense, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm changing what I'm up to. For instance, okay, I had a number of people telling me that, I was diabetic. And then the same people told me they couldn't find it anymore. I can tell you, knowing what I do now, there's no question I'm diabetic. But I found out, number one, I looked into it, found out how and what needed to be done. A lot of it was indicated by them, by changing diet, changing my exercise habits, the whole 9 yards. Now, a spiritual leader will tell you, you've got to pray. Now, I'm going to throw something on the table here. Somebody's going to get right choked with me. Hopefully not YouTube. Okay, but I just want you to think about this. I'm not here, I'm here to go, look, it's time to reclaim power over your own life and start working together. Now, do not get me wrong. I grew up in the church. I am, by rights, I am an ordained minister. Okay, do I go to a church? No, I don't. But I got asking myself once, we pray to God and whatever help, and I've done it myself. I still talk to the guy. Whatever works to help you feel a little more connected, absolutely do it. But ask yourself this. Before mankind came along, or for that matter, any species, did whoever you consider God, did they have worshipers? Did they have people actually saying, this is what we've got to do this to make this work? Or did he do it because that's what he chose to do? Now, you spiritual leaders around the world, and the reason I don't specify one religion is because what I found in my journeys is that around the world, spiritual leaders are going, make a donation. We will take care of the poor. We'll take care of the homeless. I got news for you. We have one massive homeless problem and one massive poor problem. And yet, with all these spiritual groups saying this is what we're taking care of, I've yet to find anybody that can explain to me why we've got the problems. Whoa, how you doing? You are in with honorable mention. Yeah. LA goes, personally, my favorite church is the Deep Woods. Or on a fishing boat. I like the Deep Woods. My problem is I can go out there and I literally can't get back. Okay. It's not a question I go out there and go, oh, I love the place. I get lost. So needless to say, I don't go out into the deep woods often. But when you're dealing with spiritual leaders, their responsibility is literally to help people come to find a balance, find a way to look at other people and say, hey, you're very similar to what I am. As my father used to say, and he was the head of the Sunday school he was the superintendent of Sunday schools. Okay, in our little town. And he used to tell people, look, every person out there still puts pants on one leg at a time. Except for one case where I saw a person do a gymnastic backflip to put the pants on. Yes, they had a rig set up to hold the pants up. You know, but, you know, the reality of it is this. If you're in a position and you're claiming to be a spiritual leader, and I will tell you, there are some that I've met that are absolutely true to their words. And I won't say that for very many people, but I will tell you this. LA Storm, you know, LA Moon and Storm are two people you can bet your bottom dollar. If you ask them a question, they'll be honest with you. Kira will do the same thing. And in case you hadn't noticed, I'm hard pressed not to. My problem is I ended up sticking my foot in my mouth and going, oops, probably should have said that differently. But like I said, the responsibility of the religious leaders and the spiritual leaders, quite frankly, by their own stated doctrine, is to end war. Okay. And yet, what I find them doing almost unilaterally is going, God's going to solve it for us. Okay. You know, he's going to come down, he's going to bring peace. Now, understand, by all of the spiritual leaders that I've talked to, by all of their definitions, okay, God gave everybody free will. Now, would it make rational sense if he gave you free will? Would it make rational sense that he should come down and take your chosen way of creating chaos in your life and remove it? He told you it's a bad idea. But the spiritual leaders today, and I've seen this happen way, way, way too frequently. Skip to Malou, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, I've seen way too many of them. They'll take the money that comes in from donations and what have you and put it to their own use. And again, does this promote honesty amongst the people that are following? Or is this something that is more likely creating a sense of, oh, you get into a position of power and you can now take this stuff for yourself? That's the leadership example that seems to be being portrayed. In my eyes, this doesn't work well. You know, one of the things that we have to look, well, we don't have to. You get your own choice on that one. But when I look at a religious leader, a religious or spiritual, and here's the difference for me. A religious leader is somebody that is sitting inside a church outlay, and no matter what the denomination, no matter what the claim, okay, they are sitting there following that doctrine and telling you this is what you should be doing. And yet these same leaders, when you talk to them, I had one, it was brilliant. He literally come up to me. Now, this is a guy that was well positioned in his church, in his temple. He comes up to me and he goes, you know, God loves everybody. God wants all of you being there. Okay. And then in the same breath, he turns around and goes, I would have invited you to our temple had you been dressed better. Now, I don't know about you, but spiritual leaders, aside from whatever the spiritual path is that they've said, this is your governing clothing. Okay. If you're striving to if you're striving to lead people to peace, then frankly, spewing greed, disparity, fear, and anger seems to be a bit counterproductive. Where are we here?
It looks like Skip's just replying to Woo. I think.
Yeah, I see this. There's a lot. Like, I encourage cross current. Okay, so of course, every now and again, what happens is I'll see something go through, and I'll take a look at it. And then bring myself back. At least I try and bring myself back. But one of the things that we have to realize is this kind of, yeah, no doubt. Now something with that statement, Skip's just going, I need a new husband. And, I will tell you this. When people get married, and this seems to be across the world, they get married till death do us part. Now, I am a very strong proponent for if you're having troubles with your partner, absolutely work through it. But when we start talking about being married forever or being together forever, or till death do us part, understand something very critical. And this is literally my own personal view. It's also the reason my first marriage ended. Okay. I am a firm believer that death that's being referred to is the death of the emotional connection. Okay. The worst thing that people can do to themselves is stay connected to any sort, because understand, a spiritual leader may well be your other half. Okay. But when you look at that, okay, if you're staying with your current belief structure because of fear of what will happen, because of fear of what you'll lose if you don't, okay, you may have a problem and something to absolutely reassess. I did a number of years ago, I actually looked at moving to the States, and leaving everything I knew in Canada behind and moving to the States. Okay. Thankfully, things went a different direction. I stayed put. Now I don't look at moving there. I don't even know if I can visit there at this point. But when you're looking at leaders, let me ask you this. With the current spiritual guidelines we've got, and yes, in my opinion, whether we are talking a spiritual leader or a political one, the political leaders are still guiding the spiritual path. They claim they're not, but frankly, their behavior is what governs what other people are responding to. If that political leader is talking about unifying things, this is great. It's like if I could figure out, and I think it's already happened, way years ago, like decades back, in Ireland, you used to have fights all the time between the Roman Catholics and the Protestants. Okay. Now, from what I gather, that's tapered out a little bit. Okay. Now, I mean, you think about it. They had two things, all of them, the Protestants and the Catholics, had two things in common with each other all the way along. They were both Christians, and they were all human. Well, most of them were. But it took them decades. But from what I gather, they managed to find a little bit of a baseline. Okay. Common ground can be found even in the most diverse situations. But the responsibility of the leaders is to lead the march towards peace, not towards, and do understand, peace means lack of war. If a war ends, and the reason it ends is because everybody's dead, this is not what we call peace. This is what is called lack of target. Okay, but the spiritual leaders have got to start looking. It's time. After years of just watching things fall apart, we are starting to make some headway. Go ahead, Carol.
Oh no, that's okay. I was just looking at the chat. We're fine.
One of the things that we have to look at, okay, is when you take a look at the path you are personally on. Absolutely. You turn around, okay, you look at what's going on. Absolutely, you have to work within the guidelines. I strongly encourage each and every one of you, whether you believe what you're being told by political people, by religious people, doesn't matter. I mean, if you believe this is great, but if it doesn't ring true, It's time to follow karmic law. You must be true to you first. If you're not comfortable with the way you're being treated, it's time to look to extricate yourself. Okay. Charlene, how you doing? Glad you could join us. The reality of it is when we look at a spiritual leader, we've got to look at the one that is actually pushing the idea of equal treatment, and we'll get to that again. Operation, I will get to that in 10 seconds. You've got to look at whether or not your spiritual or your religious leader is pushing for unification and peace, or are they pushing for quiet by conquest? This is the big thing you have to look at. Okay, technically, I've got to find a different phrase because you don't have to. You've got free will. Now, Operation asked, Keith, do the off-worlders have religious conflict? Absolutely. I don't say this very often. 100% yes. Many off-world races have religious conflict. Okay. All the way across the cosmos, this goes on. And all the way across the cosmos, I keep telling the same people, like all these different species, the same thing. You got to find common ground. Okay. Even when you're looking at personal relationships, you got into them because there was common ground at one point or another. But the thing is, I have seen civilizations wiped out on many different planets because of religious differences. Okay. One of the things you have to look at, okay, is there is almost always a way to solve problems. Okay, to find common ground. Now, of course, I've already told you, this is my second marriage. Okay, and therefore I'm telling you, you can find common ground. You can, but there are times when that common ground is not there. But that doesn't mean you have to be enemies. It doesn't mean you have to continue to fight each other. Okay, when you're looking at religious guidelines. Okay, now, I could go into also, I've gone through a lot of different religious doctrines. It's one of the few things I've actually done a little bit of research on. Okay, but what I found is the early books that were written, or the early guidelines that were laid out, have been drastically changed, almost unilaterally, across the different religions and spiritual paths. Okay, and even amongst the so-called ancient religions, the pagan religions, even amongst them, there are differences. This doesn't mean you all have to be the same. You don't all have to call bread, bread. Okay, I mean, let's face it. In the Western world, I don't know about you guys, but I learned to call buns, buns. In Britain, apparently they call them biscuits. It's the same thing. We've got to stop getting so hung up on the fact that names are a little different. Oh, that's excellent, Skip. I am glad your garden is blooming. I'm quite talented where it comes to growing plants. I can kill an air plant in 3 days. Now that takes work. One of the things we have to look at when you're looking at finding a common way to deal with things, just remember karmic law number 2. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Now, the reality is, if the spiritual leaders were to follow this, we wouldn't have as many complicated problems. Because if they were treating people the way they desire to be treated and setting that as an example, okay, all of a sudden you've got a situation where the people you're guiding are following in your footsteps. Children are not born They're not born greedy. They're not born prejudiced. This is something they learn as they grow older. Okay, people following a given spiritual path are not born following it. They are guided by the religious and spiritual leaders. This is how you're supposed to behave. Okay, but I will tell you, when I was gaming and when I was playing D&D and Aftermath, Star Frontiers, these sorts of games, some of you guys recognize the names. Okay, one of the things that we have to take a look at here is this. Okay, in the gaming world, and you'd have to understand them to realize how this applies. This does not work in the physical world, in the world where you're dealing with actual people. But some of the gaming characters came up with a really neat idea. The karmic law is do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Meaning, I desire you guys to be honest with me. Okay? Therefore, I'm just going to be honest with you. I do desire people to be tactful. Unfortunately, much as I desire to do likewise, I'm not really good at it. But what they found with the gamers, what I found with some of the gamers, is their characters went, do unto others as you think they are going to do unto you, but do it first and then split. This is the way the world seems to be operating right now. And I'm telling you, it is not leading to a good end. Operation asked a little while ago if there were religious conflicts on other planets. And you remember that funny little planet next door to us? That one that we call Mars? It used to be a flourishing megalopolis. Okay, now we are talking about millions of years ago at this point. Okay, but they had a couple of conflicts that ended up with a wasteland on their roof. Okay, they no longer live on the surface. They managed to burn the atmosphere out rather nicely there. But they didn't wipe their society out. They now get along with pretty much every faction. Yes, there are still people that don't get along. I appreciate that, Skip. It's funny. Skip is just saying and when I get mad, she gets worried. My own parents warned my brothers, do not let me get mad. And I'm not going to go into the details on why. I am more worried about my temper than most people are. And I know Kara can vouch for the fact it's not a fun thing to lose. But if guided properly, if gauged properly, anger can be redirected into passion. Okay? And this is what I'm encouraging you guys to do. If you're mad at somebody, if you're having a conflict, do what you can to find a balance point. And I am absolutely in favor of, even when there is the biggest problem I've seen marriages have. Well, no. There are three things I've seen cause marriages to falter, or rather encourage it. Okay? And it can be chalked up to spiritual guidance. If you are not taught how to find a balance point, you're going to have a problem. But the three things that will end a relationship of any form. Okay? Death, sorry, in most cases, that's pretty much permanent. You have to be looking at somebody that takes the idea of death and goes, well, that's rather inconvenient. Now, can we get on with life? And rest assured, that's a twisted outlook. Okay, but that's one of the big ones. And that one, sorry, most of you, if your partner dies, you're going to have to figure out how to move forward, okay, and carry on. The second one is fidelity. Okay, this means you get into a relationship with somebody and you do what most people call cheating. And by the way, this whole idea of being told that a polyamorous relationship works, there are so very few people I've ever met in all of those relationships where it actually did work. Sooner or later, people realize polyamory, for most people, turns around to be, you're cheating on me and I'm no longer happy. Okay? And I know some of you are going, oh, you're just against polyamory. I could care less about it. Okay? From my standpoint, it's simple. You desire to live your life that way, knock yourself out. But I already had a very blunt conversation with my wife that will end the relationship before the echo dies. Needless to say, I'm not about to go down that road either. Now, spiritual leaders, they tell you till death do you part, but they're forgetting the thing they don't take into consideration is sometimes that doesn't work. Okay, and when you start putting your religious doctrine, and I'm talking to you as though you're the leader. If your leader as the leader are putting your religious doctrine, those words on a piece of paper, ahead of the spiritual well-being of your parishioners or of your followers, you're doing something a little backwards. Okay. Now, there are way too many things that have been brushed under the carpet lately. Okay, and the religious and spiritual leaders all have the same. They have the same issue. Okay, and like I said, whether we use spiritual leader, religious leader, political leader, community leader, it doesn't matter. If you're a leader, okay, your responsibility is to do your best to be unbiased. And the moment you find you're biased in one fashion or another, it is time to really take a step back. I look at a comment like that. Skip goes, yep, Christian told me if I traveled to Vegas, I would just cheat. I had a deal to help Tim to get Lady Company. No cheating, but he is so jealous. I'm not allowed to travel. I offered to pay for him in my say also. Now here's the thing. If you're pointing at somebody and you're going to do this, okay, you've already tried and convicted that person. Okay, and what I have found in most cases, and bear in mind there are differences. Okay, when I look at Kira, I don't go, if you go out of my sight, you're going to cheat. I go, you go out of my sight, I'm likely, if I don't have contact, I'm likely to worry. Absolutely, I will. But I don't worry about her cheating any more than I worry about me cheating. The moment somebody is going, you're going to do this, flip that around. You maybe have a problem. Even if you go out of the house, you're going to do this. Take a look in the mirror and ask yourself honestly, if you were in their position, would you do the same thing? And secondly, especially where it comes to breaking your vows, where it comes to fidelity in the religious faction, if it comes down to, if I don't keep an eye on you, you're going to break the commandments or the doctrines, you may have a problem. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, give an opportunity, which of the guidelines you're striving to tell people to follow would you actually break if you had the opportunity? One of the things that we have to look at, okay, is there are ways of taking that kind of conversation, that kind of thought, and flipping it around. Now, I will tell you, I've got a bad habit of putting my foot in my mouth. So when people ask me, how do you deal with this? I'll give you an example of how it worked out. I had a client that came to me one day, and he goes, Keith, he says, I know this is going to cost me, but I need a smart aleck remark, and you're the biggest smart aleck I know. I went, okay, what's the problem? The guy was talking to a gentleman of another color, okay, and a mutual coworker of theirs comes up and looks at him and goes, what, you don't have a home to go to? He says, how do I answer that? I says, you got one of two options. I says, You look at the guy and you go, yeah, but my shrink says it's okay for me to be out at night. I says the other option you've got is you look him dead in the eye and you smile at him and you go, well, of course I do. Why? You jealous? Now, these are both comments that may get you in trouble. Lord knows why they didn't get me in trouble. Okay. Oh, did I miss something? I did so. Rachel, how you doing? Glad you could join us. There we are. Hopefully things are settling down to a dull roar for you. Now the neat little part of it, okay, when we take a look at the responsibility of any leader in existence, and yes, by the way, let's just say for a moment, and some of you will have to think back on this one. When you were kids, if you had a little brother or a little sister or friends, okay, and you were the one guiding them, you happen to be the leader. Okay. And that's one of the things we have to realize is as a leader, we have a responsibility to be honest ourselves. At least you want people to be honest with you. Okay. And absolutely guide them to a non-combative, non-argumentative path. Okay. And yeah, if you've got a temper like I've got, this is not always an easy trip. Okay. But the responsibility is to guide people to a non-conflict solution. Okay. I've worked, and I'm going to use the only term I know for it, where it comes to helping people land into a balanced relationship. I have worked absolute miracles that nobody thought were going to be possible. I remember one pair of clients. I didn't realize the situation. I had two clients at the same time, both women, both in very happy marriages according to them, except they had found that they were no longer interested in their husbands. They were interested in getting together with each other. Now, say what you will about the lifestyle. That's your guys' call. In my case, I looked at it simply. Not my call, so I helped them both. Not realizing the reality behind it, helped them both bring their marriages to an amicable close where both husband and wife had constant access with the kids, okay, and were friends on both sides. It wasn't until after the divorces that I discovered that the two women I'd been dealing with were breaking away from their husbands to get together. Okay, absolutely bizarre setup in my eyes. As far as the fact I ended up with two different clients going down the same road, I just didn't put two and two together because it didn't really make a lot of difference to me. Let's face it, whether they stayed in their marriage or not, didn't have a whole lot of impact on my life. And it looks like I missed a couple here. Flubber's in. How you doing, Flubber?
Oh, I missed them too.
And Blue Cruz has arrived. How you doing, Blue? So we've got a lot, like there's a lot of change happening here. And I'm noticing, just a real quick update, we are now up to 723. Okay, still real tiny numbers. I see new people on YouTube coming up, and it's like, oh, we're already over 10,000. We're at 723 after 3 years. Okay. So when I take a look at this, it took me a while to realize, granted, our subscribers are not high volume, but there is an old saying, okay? Thank you for the heads up there, LA. That wasn't the saying, by the way. There is an old saying, quality is way better than quantity. So we've got 723 subscribers right now. And I like to look at it as though these are quality people. I see you guys all the time helping each other out. That is what this is all about. When I talk about working to make this a better world for virtually everybody, I'm doing what I can on this end. And I know by looking at the chat room, it is happening consistently out in your world as well. One of the hardest things to deal with is you watch all the negativity that's out there, and it is just disaster after disaster that people are telling you about. Okay. And one of the things I've got to take a look at, and why I keep coming back to, is if you see something, if you feel something's off kilter, especially when you look in the mirror, make the effort to change it. Okay. Now, I had to come to an interesting temporary conclusion. It is highly. I just finished earlier this podcast, this cast. Okay, I just finished saying yes. I'm certain I'm diabetic. However, I've also had to come to the realization that it is likely that with the amount of energy that I'm burning, and frankly the lack of sleep, I may require a higher volume of sugar coming in anyway. This said, I also have to thereby modify my diet to make sure I can purge it. Okay, and one of the things we have to look at is whatever's going on in your life. If you're having trouble, absolutely. I've got right now, as a matter of fact, I got to do that. But I've got 9 books in print and access to get to spiritual counseling with me. I am absolutely unbiased. I'm not about to tell you what you're doing is, shall we say, evil. I will tell you it's counterproductive. But then I've dealt with people in as diverse a background as the Crips and the Bloods. Okay, and if you're in the States, you've probably heard of them. Okay, I don't look at people like that as any worse than the person on the street that ignores their own responsibilities where it comes to paying their own bills. Okay, I look at everybody virtually identically. Aside from, I will tell you this, quite honestly, I certainly look at men and women differently. Okay, but sorry, you're going to have to let your mind go where it will on that one.
Keith, since we're coming down a little bit towards the end of our show, could we get, for our listeners and people who may not be able to see the chat, a quick way of getting a hold of you, even if it's just to come into contact and coordinate a session?
The easiest way, that's an excellent idea there. The easiest way to get a hold of me is if you go to the site. This is posted at the top of the stream. Go to the site, buymeacoffee.com/innervoicej. That will take you to all the books I've got, to a link to get in touch with me directly regarding consulting, or if you're just looking to help contribute so I can put all this stuff in motion. I've got all kinds of things I'd like to see happen with this world. And I'll tell you, I honestly can say, if I were a billionaire, a lot of very poor people wouldn't be. But there's a catch to that. You cannot effectively take a whole pile of money and drop it on somebody's lap and hope they're going to figure it out, because the education is missing. And this is something we've got to get back to and got to start implementing. And rest assured, if there's somebody that knows how to procrastinate, that's me. Okay, I can teach how to do that easily. I used to put things off. Now I just don't do them. Cuts down on the stress. But when we take a look at the way this world is right now, where are we? That's where we are. When we take a look at the way this world is right now, you've got the ability to change the way this world is going in spite of the spiritual leaders, the leaders of all kinds. You've got the opportunity to do so, even if you're younger than everybody you know. Have you ever heard the term "from out of the mouths of babes"? They weren't talking about runway models only. Okay. Oh, there, Mojo, how you doing? Welcome aboard. Just a quick little note for you and for those who are here that haven't been here before. Absolutely, if you've got a question, drop it in the chat room in all caps so I can find the thing. Okay, and rest assured that, there's a saying, there's no stupid questions Accept the question that is never asked. Because if you've got a question, the odds are somebody else out there does. Okay. The most difficult part of all of it is, especially if you've been going through a rough time, believing there can be an end is a massive challenge. Okay. Now, much as I talk very positively while I'm here, and when I'm talking to people, rest assured what goes on inside my head, that's a whole lot more depressing. So we don't go into that a lot of the time. Because I'm thinking talking about what depresses me is not going to help any of you feel any better. And I will tell you this whole idea, and so many spiritual leaders make this mistake. Oh, the people over in that country are having a bad, they're having a real rough time of it. So we got to send them money. Guys, I feel for the people in another part of the world. I really do. But as I told my mom, when I tore my leg apart, and she pointed out that the neighbor had broken his arm, as I told him, they're having a bad time. Certainly, this is terrible. But pointing the finger over there and shining the light there doesn't change what's going on in your world. It may change your perspective of it a little, but you're still going to have to do something about the local. Okay, kind of a necessary idea. And absolutely, because we're winding down here, I do want to encourage people to let your friends know. Heck, let strangers, your friends, your family members, even people you don't like, let them know we're here. We are focusing on the idea of getting everybody, all of them included, working together to make this a better world for virtually everybody. Okay, and yes, that includes the leaders and the followers. Doesn't matter. Leaders, followers, pets, plants, everybody's included. Okay, now with that in mind, I just got to take a quick pop here. Whoop, that was the wrong one. That one. Okay. Now I still don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, but I know we'll be focusing on the financial world and ways to turn it around. We've got to deal with that. On Tuesday, on the 10th, we are going to be dealing with something that Kira brought up. I talk about treating everybody as an equal. So we're going to look at what that really means. Okay. Very important factor from that end. Because if when I can get that message across and see it being replicated, this is when we start to see our world change. The moment you do it, you'll see it in your own neighborhood. Okay. And there's a lot of reasons for starting there. But with that in mind, I got to get those swapped around. With that in mind, I am doing my best here. As Joe Stewart put it quite a number of years back now, I think. I'm not perfect, but I am doing my best. And when I said I'm looking for the best of the best in my world, well, the young lass behind me ranks up there. Okay. And the fact is, I will do what I have to, what I'm able, what I'm permitted, to help turn the lights on so you too can make the most of the life you've got, quite often in spite of, what your religious, your spiritual leaders are telling you.
Oh, sorry, that's just my display.
Okay, I can work with that. Okay. Yes, they are leaders. They are guides. Okay. They are not the one that makes the final decision. Okay. And that said, I do want to take this moment, and thank you very much for that, LA. I do want to take this moment to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow again at 9 p.m. And that's, well, we'll still call it PST because we don't have another term for it yet. Not 9 p.m., 8 p.m. PST tomorrow. I do look forward to seeing you then. And by all means, until we talk again, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.